Everybody, shockingly high tariffs have pretty much put a halt to trade with China. There's almost nothing coming from that country at the moment. But now there is this deal to at least temporarily reverse that, and perhaps just in time. So here are the numbers. Overall tariffs on Chinese goods will drop from 145% to 30%. China cutting its tariffs on American imports down to 10%. Well, tonight we're looking into the impact that will have on what we all buy. First, though, how much of the damage is already done? Listen to what was said from top officials at the ports of Long Beach and Seattle.
We currently do not have any container ships at port right now.
We may be seeing empty products on the shelves. So this is now going to be felt by the consumer.
As of a few days ago, cargo traffic bound for the U.S. was at its lowest point since the pandemic. Once cargo does make it to U.S. ports, the goods still take a few weeks to actually hit store shelves. Dr. Patrick Penfield is a Syracuse University professor of supply chain practice and director of executive education at the Whitman School of Management at Cuse, and he joins us live tonight. It is so great to get your insight on this. As I mentioned a moment ago, I have about 1 million questions, so I'll go through them quickly. But first, I want to ask you, how big a deal is it that we're going from 145% down to 30%?
Yeah, it's remarkable. Yeah, that's huge. I think, again, when you hear that, you think that you're getting a great deal now, right? We're like, oh, 145% to 30%. That is unbelievable. It's still, the consumer and your viewers are still going to feel this on the shelves.
And I mentioned there what we heard from the officials at these ports, right? Seattle, Long Beach, LA. They're saying, look, there are just no ships right now coming from China. Even if that reverses immediately, aren't we going to probably see some shortages in things? And what do you think could be most impacted, since we've gone now several weeks without getting this sort of regular flow of stuff?
Yeah, excellent point, Michael. So you basically have a hole in the supply pipeline. So everything stopped. And so what happened was retailers were like, hey, we're not going to pay 145% in addition to the product costs. And so we'll try to figure out how to get it maybe for someplace else. And so, that's a long, tedious process to resource and find. So, roughly the hole is about 6-7 weeks, right? So there's just stuff not coming through. So there'll be stuff on the shelves. It will be noticeable probably, I would say, the next 6 weeks. You'll start to see stuff there that's not there. And then we've got another issue that's going to happen is we've got this 90-day window where retailers only have to pay 30% more, so there'll be a mass rush. And then what will happen is all the container ships will basically get booked, and then their prices will go up. And then in addition to the 30%, you'll probably see maybe another 10% on top of that, as far as prices going up.
And when I think of a 30% tariff, I mean, under normal circumstances, we would view that as a massive tariff, right? Maybe compared to 145%, it's not, but 30% is still a lot. How much of that, in terms of Chinese goods, do you expect would be passed on to the consumer? Because there is this idea, right, that they would eat some of that, but obviously it's hard to eat 30%.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. So that's a good point. I think, your big retailers might push back on some of the Chinese suppliers and say, hey, look, we'd like you to eat some of this. But I do know this is that the Chinese government did step in when it was at 145% and basically told some of the big retailers that they will not be absorbing any of this cost. So my expectation is you're going to definitely see at least a 30% increase on a lot of your retail items.
And finally, how confident are you that in this 90-day period, we will get to something that doesn't just result in the tariff going back to 145%, or the president indicated earlier today, if they don't make a deal, it may even go higher than 145%. I mean, how much pressure is there on the two sides here to avoid that?
Yeah, I think it's immense. I mean, from my vantage point, I think the right approach might be targeted tariffs, on some items, but not on footwear and apparel. I think that's just crazy, to have, your viewers and the consumers just suffer, with paying more. So I think the big issue, Michael, is uncertainty, right? And so this is, when you have these trade negotiations that go on, sometimes they take years, right? So again, if you're not both willing to give and take, and again, you see this 90-day window, my expectation probably is that the retailers are all going to push pretty hard, to get as much product as they can in that 90 days, just because, again, of the uncertainty. So my expectations is that I don't see a trade agreement happening, in the next 6 months, maybe next year. These things take time. And so, that's the unfortunate thing.
Yeah, and it's complex. We will, by the way, get the consumer price index tomorrow that tells us about inflation for the past month, right? We'll see if the tariffs thus far have had any impact on the prices that we're paying. Dr. Patrick Penfield with Syracuse University, great to see you. Thanks so much for taking time.
Great to see you too, Michael. Have a great day.
All right.